values unfortunately this business interests you want to do. You're going to get
And are we good? Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to have everyone here in our location and then online. I think we have a fairly large group on our webcast. Welcome, everyone. My name is Gonzalo Ferro. I am PTCMW's past president, so I'm almost finished with my term. Before we get started, I have a couple of announcements and housekeeping things that I want to go through. First of all, I want to thank PAN, who are not only presenting today, but they're also the sponsors of this event, and they've also covering the cost of all of our attendees on online. So we really appreciate your support. December 8th is our fall event. That is our premier flagship event of the year for PTCMW. We're having a really special event this year. We are recognizing John Campbell with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he's going to be our guest of honor and our discussant in our panel discussion. Our panel discussion is titled Performance Management, to rate or not to rate. Is that the right question? And we have a panel of experts in the area who should be really interesting. That'll take about 2 hours, and afterwards we have our normal networking session. Every year we have right around 20, 22 different organizations who are sponsors, both private industry and federal government. I think we have between 200 and 300 people attend, mostly IOs, but not all IOs. It's a great opportunity to network, to meet like-minded folks who are doing the same work that you're doing, and to get to know some of the premier organizations in the area. So we encourage everyone to register, go to our website to get more information, ptcmw.org. And the last thing is that, as you all know, we have a big election coming, not the presidential one, but the PTC board election. So yeah, exactly. And everybody's running for that. So not just 2 candidates, we have lots of candidates. So speaking of, if anybody is interested in volunteering and being a part of PTC, we're a nonprofit, we're a volunteer organization. So we need you guys to be a part of. Please go to our website. There's information on the elections. Send any of us board members, the president, past president, vice president, an email letting them know that you're interested, or if you know someone who you'd like to nominate, please do so in the next 2 weeks. We will be sending out the ballot with all the nominees towards the middle of November, and with the election, and they'll be open for 2 weeks, and then we'll announce the new board at the fall event. Okay? Great. If there's no questions, we'll get started with our talk. So with us today is ScottStubenrauch. Nice. All right, got that right. Scott is a licensed clinical psychologist and educator specializing in personality and psychological assessment. He has extensive experience consulting for organizations linked to law enforcement, emergency responding, corrections, private security, and paramilitary overseas contracting. Scott is presently employed as the chief psychologist of the Government Public Safety and Security Wing of PAN, where he's responsible for providing selection and development assessment solutions to agencies and organizations that operate in these sectors. He was recently awarded status as the Diplomat in Police Psychology through the Society of Police and Criminal Psychology. Scott also provides volunteer debriefing services as part of the Northern Illinois Critical Incident Stress Management Response Team. He earned his doctorate with a postgraduate certificate in forensic psychology from the Illinois School of Professional Psychology, and also holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Roosevelt University. With that, thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Bear with me for a moment as I attach the microphone. Okay. Thanks for having me out today to talk about emotional intelligence. It happens to be a topic that I've been following for a few years, and was offered the opportunity to explore some emotional intelligence assessments in the marketplace when joining PAN. And just to give you a little background, I've been with PAN for 5 years, if you include the 4 years that I was working with company IPAT, the Institute of Personality and Ability Testing, which PAN purchased, acquired late last year. So I've been in this role for the last 5 years. So today, really the goal of this presentation is to talk to you about some advantages in assessing and developing emotional intelligence. And we're going to do that by covering a few items here. I'm going to start by talking to you a little bit about the relationships between emotions and behavior, a little bit about the history of how emotional intelligence as a topic, as a concept, has kind of gotten in the market. I'll cover some of the more popular models out there and some research, get to a working definition so that we all have a basis of what we understand emotional intelligence to be, and then talk about some of the applications, including going through one of the projects that we're currently working on in terms of introducing a emotional intelligence assessment to our platform for the public safety market. So what is emotional intelligence? And believe it or not, it's not quite an easy question to answer. And the reason for that is there are a lot of different models that exist out there. And the different models claim that it's one thing, other models claim it's another thing, there's some overlap between them, but there is some limitations in terms of what the overarching agreement is, in terms of what the actual definition is. So we really need to unpack that today. And in order to do that, we're going to be going through some of the models, and then from there we have to be able to identify and measure what aspects are incorporated into emotional intelligence. So we'll start going into a little bit more of some of the assessments out there that are reliable and valid on the market. So to begin, the relationships between emotions and behavior. For any folks that can think back to their Psych 101 classes, the beginning of this model is very much B.F. Skinner, Pavlovian and his dog research, where a stimulus or some kind of event sparks a reaction in someone. And that reaction could be an emotion, an immediate emotion, feeling, or it could be a behavioral reflex that's activated by the central nervous system. And that's kind of where they stopped. That's where most of their research occurred, focused on. In the space between the second bullet and the final bullet, we have a lot of processing that's going on in between. We have a lot of thoughts and cognitive processes that are going on. We have a lot of feelings and emotions that are going on over time. And I'm talking, it could last from anywhere between 3 seconds after that immediate reaction goes on, all the way up to a lifetime. But we think and feel about things that have happened to us previously. And the bigger the event or the stimulus is, the more impact it has across the model. But this last part, this last bullet, is really the focus or foundation of emotional intelligence is all about. And that's the long-term response. Because as this thinking and feeling is going on along the way, we are behaving towards that. We are reacting towards that, whether we realize it or not. And it's the act of making behaviors intentional, realizing we are having these feelings and thoughts along the way, and being able to use them in an intentional way for some kind of desired outcome or goal. That's what emotional intelligence is all about. And whether we like it or not, emotional intelligence is literally all around us. Every room we walk into, every interaction that we have with someone. And that's because everything can be considered affective stimuli. I walked into this room, I noticed the rug. It reminded me of a rug that my grandmother had. And growing up, I had great memories at my grandmother's house. It brought a good... Did I acknowledge that as soon as I came in? For a brief second. It had a little impact on me. Put me in a little nice, good mood for, briefly. Everything that's going on has some kind of impact or effect on us, even if it's a little degree to something more significant. And if you apply that, and just in our daily activities, for anyone that has a spouse or a significant other, think to maybe an argument in the morning that you have and how that impacts the rest of your day. you have a frustrated emotion, certainly that can impair your ability to perform well in your role. It can impact attention, what you're focusing in on, decision making, problem solving, just your daily routine. It affects your overall health and psychological wellness. You might feel sad or depressed for the whole day because of the argument. These interactions can also affect how we operate with our coworkers during the day. That specific example, we might be a little bit short with some of our coworkers if we're in a bad mood, or perhaps a little bit more aloof. So depending on the event that happens that stimulates an emotion, that was just an example of a negative emotion, but any emotion, negative or positive, impacts how we perform throughout the day, professionally and personally. So that sets the premise of why emotions are important to look into and focus in on. So as a concept, emotional intelligence has probably always been around from the beginning of time. There are some records that Greek philosophers, the ancient Greek philosophers, had debates about what's more important, thoughts and logic versus feelings, what's better for problem solving. They had these kind of debates in public forums. But the first true publication that covers emotional intelligence as a topic was published by, or written by Charles Darwin, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, 1872. So there is the first public work that could be purchased and read across the world. From there, it was introduced into the world of psychology by E.L. Thorndike. And although it wasn't called, he didn't call or refer to it as emotional intelligence, he referred to it as social intelligence. And he did a lot of research and theorizing, and came up with the conclusion that intelligence is more than just a cognitive-based, how smart are you, what's going on upstairs in the brain. There's aspects to intelligence. And later on after that, the more well-known folks that did research on IQ, like Wechsler and Howard Gardner, came up with their own models or theories based on E.L. Thorndike's work. And worth mentioning, Howard Gardner produced these two books, The Shattered Mind and Frames of the Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the history, those are both good reads. Finally, we have Jack Block, who was a well-known personality psychologist and did a lot of research on personality. And he came up with the idea that there's more to it than just intelligence and cognitive aspects of intelligence, but that emotional intelligence is related to personality characteristics as well. So he kind of introduced that idea into the picture. So that's a real quick snapshot of the history. There's plenty of people in between that have added to the field, but much of the modern day research that, as we know emotional intelligence today, if we're read up on it, has really occurred across the 1980s and 1990s. And there's a few models that I would like to share with you that really set the stage for all the good stuff that's going on and all the good research and work that's going on now on emotional intelligence. And John Mayer and Peter Salovey were out of Yale, and they were doing a ton of different research on this idea of emotional intelligence. They actually, the term was out there in literature, but they actually adopted it and coined it as their own. So if you think of them as kind of establishing the term emotional intelligence. And their definition, the ability to monitor one's own and others' emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use the information to guide one's thinking and actions. Basically, emotional intelligence involves some form of cognitive processing, IQ type stuff, as we know, and that because of that, you can measure emotional intelligence very much like you measure IQ. And that's where there is a right or wrong answer, or in some cases where there's scenarios presented, a better answer or a worse answer. You get a point or you don't get the point for a response on their assessment. And they joined forces with also from Yale, David Caruso, and they ended up publishing the Mesquite in 1999. And basically, this is an assessment that presents some kind of situation. The test taker analyzes what's going on and gives a response. Again, there's either a better or worse answer to that. I should add, going back one screen, what Mayer and Salovey, their model is referred to as the ability model. Next, we have the emotional intelligence trait model. So where ability is linked to cognitive processing, the trait model is linked to personality traits, characteristics. And Constantine Petrides, he's a UK psychologist. In 2001, came up or produced the theory, the model. His definition is emotional intelligence encompasses behavioral dispositions and self-perceived abilities and is measured through a self-report. Basically, emotional intelligence concerns our perceptions of our emotional world. So he produced the TIQ. This is a assessment that you could purchase through his company in 2001. It's based on someone taking the assessment and saying, yeah, that sounds like me, that sounds like me, self-report. And then it's really capturing different combinations of multiple personality characteristics and whatnot. Not the clinical disorder, but the multiple characteristics. Then we have Reuven Bar-On, who came up with the idea of the mixed model. And his definition, emotional intelligence, is an array of non-cognitive capabilities, competencies, and skills that influence one's ability to succeed in coping with environmental demands and pressures. So what Bar-On is saying is that, yeah, there is an emphasis on personality traits based on his assessment, the EQI 2.0 version. Yes. But those personality traits are moderated by some kind of thought process or cognitive process that determine and respond in an emotionally intelligent way or not. So he, although he's focusing in on traits, he did introduce the fact that both aspects are at play here. And then the name that's most well known with emotional intelligence, he really popularized the term. 1995, Daniel Goleman. He published the bestseller, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ. And his assessment is referred to the SCI, published that in 1998. That's a 360-degree feedback assessment. Basically, he said, emotional intelligence is an array of skills and characteristics that drive leadership performance. So here he's painting a picture that emotional intelligence really has to do with leadership and leadership development. And it's a set of competencies as opposed to personality characteristics or cognitive abilities. So that's great and all, but there's various models here. And it's hard to determine which model is right. What is emotional intelligence? A few years ago when I started delivering presentations on emotional intelligence, that I still had a difficulty. What is the exact definition? What am I supposed to say to the audience? And so, in doing that enough times, I'd come to the conclusion that rather than say either any model is right, there's research for each of the models that will go based on what the definition is in terms of what is the outcome that we're looking for. What does emotional intelligence? What is the outcome? The behavioral outcome of that. And so although there is research to support ability in the trait model, and I'm referring everyone to this particular meta-analysis article, which really does a great job at what articles and research is out there in this regard. But it supports ability, it supports trait, but the problem is emotional intelligence is not, it shows some correlations with both, but not exact correlations, not full correlations. So what that's saying is, yeah, related to cognitive processing, it's related to personality traits, but it's still something different, one distinct picture. And unlike something like the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI, which really positions cognitive thoughts, intuition, feelings as separate entities, it's not really necessarily the case. More examples where my thoughts and my feelings are pretty consistent as opposed to complete opposites. So the idea that they're not mutually opposite experiences is telling me that the way I feel about something, the way my personality and characteristics are, the way I think about things, these are all dynamic and represent like a mixed model, but that are important and contribute to whatever emotional intelligence truly is. And then I also saw that based on looking at these models, they shared a commonality. And that commonality is that when all is said and done, and whoever's model is right, it's still getting to these final outcomes. All of them, they share this. And it has been accepted, if you read enough of the literature, it's a good working definition, is that emotional intelligence is a set of skills that include identifying and understanding the emotions of oneself and others, managing the emotions of oneself and others, and using the emotions of oneself or others to get to a desired outcome or goal. So this is the outcome. This is what emotional intelligence is. It's doing these things well in oneself and while interacting with others. And what's important to note is that I underlined the word skills. Unlike cognitive processing, which has a right or wrong answer, unlike personality characteristics that are not skills, they are a little bit more inherent, ingrained in who we are, that don't truly change too much over time. Skills can be measured and they can be learned and developed. So if someone said, hey, would you like to come into this development program? We'll help you grow in this personality area. Well, the question is, how much can personality change over time? Versus in a skill set where can you learn to better understand your emotions, learn to better manage them? Skills that can be measured, can be learned, can be developed. And I just put it into a little graph here so it's easy to see how it kind of all interacts and plays together. But these three in green are basically the intrapersonal characteristics, and the ones in orange are the interpersonal characteristics. And I labeled them too, so I took the definition, and then in parentheses I have the label of just kind of how I envision what's going on, what I call it. So self-awareness is for identifying and understanding your own emotions, self-regulation for managing your own emotions, self-expression for using your own emotions, identifying and understanding the emotions of others is empathy, managing others' emotions, interactive, and using others' emotions is motivational. Here's what some of the research shows is that emotional intelligence can these important words. So I didn't go ahead and cite all the specific research, but this is a fantastic source, the Emotional Intelligence Consortium. You can go there and they have pretty much any relevant research concept or topic, any of the emotional intelligence gurus that we've already presented. All the stuff is in there. You can just go in and have at it and learn as much as you want about it. But overall, the multiple articles have shown that it predicts sales performance, teamwork and coworker communication skills, customer or patient satisfaction, stress coping skills, burnout. It's predicting psychological wellness, specifically it's correlated negative depression, leadership effectiveness, and job satisfaction and employee. There's others, but those are kind of the more common ones we see in a workplace. So what does this apply to what PAN wants to do and to what we're looking to offer? So in the protective service industry, if you take a look at a lot of the current events that are going on, specifically the Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter movement, and therein lies the problem that there's a versus. They could be working together better in ways to overcome what these issues that are going on. And I know firsthand that most of the law enforcement market understands that. And as a result, you can just do a Google search and see how many articles are out there where they're begging for some kind of emotional intelligence programming. They're saying, listen, we're not perfect. We know this. Our jobs are stressful. We're not going to get it right every single time, but we're not trying to be vicious. We're here to protect. Most of the officers out there are there to do their role. Security officers, they're there to do their role and break jobs. Some make mistakes. There are some bad apples, just like any occupation. But it's the fact that there are ways to improve, and they acknowledge we can get better. And so the ask has been there. Hey, what's this emotional intelligence is about? What is it about? We're interested in being able to communicate better with others, be able to de-escalate situations better, reduce our stress. These are important for us. Please help us. The ask is out there. So being that this is the type of stuff, this is the type of work we do with this sector, we wanted to start exploring what do we have, or what can we develop, or what is out there that can help the professions, the different professions in this industry. And so we analyzed a lot of aspects, what would be the cost and time involved in developing our own assessment and putting together our own developmental programming involved with this. And to do that right, to have a psychometrically sound assessment, that certainly takes, at minimum couple years to get that right. You got to build the right norm base and thus forth. But that wasn't a solution. The need is right now. 2 years is not, that's waiting too long. So we started exploring different assessments that we presently have on the PAN platform. And there are some good tools on there. One of the issues being, though, that they were either focused on just selection or just development. Perhaps they didn't come with any developmental resources or programming, and they were standalone assessments that would allow a consultant, an IO consultant or a job coach or anyone that would use the assessment to have to develop their own programming. They could use the assessment, but there was limitations. So we decided, all right, we need a solution that, one, can help departments and agencies and security firms to be able to identify and select intelligent officers, candidates out there. Once they're selected, we saw value in to train them, the training phase, to identify, take an emotional intelligence assessment, identify the strengths, identify the areas of needed growth, and then allow tailored training to occur to obviously leverage the strengths and improve the areas that need improvement. Nobody's going to be perfect, especially early on in their career. Once they're hired on and get into the streets or assigned to a certain location, then there's the whole idea of the jobs themselves are stressful. Some more than others, but in general, protective services roles are stressful, high-risk jobs that are prone to burnout and prone and could lead to sleep issues and eating issues and relationship issues, all the issues we've talked about with emotional intelligence, that here's a proactive way. How great would it be to be able to send in a news article or on social media to say, hey, our department agency, our firm is adopting an emotional intelligence development program, and we are putting all our officers through it. And we are being proactive in terms of helping them and training them and teaching them how to keep stress at bay and communicate, communicate with the public better, communicate with the client better, communicate with their coworkers better. It's proactive. That's fantastic. And then there's this idea of what's called a fitness for duty evaluation. And a fitness for duty evaluation, in summary, it's a some kind of officer or protective services personnel goes through some performance-based issue, and the performance issue is problematic to some degree, and we don't know necessarily if that's based on a psychological issue going on, and if they're weapon carrying, should their gun be taken away? Let's send them to a psychologist, put them through an evaluation, and determine if they are fit or not. And if not, what can be done to help get them to be fit again. So we were proposing there was a benefit in not waiting to the last minute to send them for a fitness for duty evaluation where they're found there is an issue and, hey, this is what you need to do. Why not along the line, while there's signs and patterns developing over time, before it gets to a severe issue, do something about it. Bring in a developmental program for emotional intelligence. See what that does. See if that helps with the relationship issues that are going on and the stress issues that are going on in them. And from there, if the patterns continue, then send them for fitness for duty evaluation. But we're willing to bet that there's going to be a reduction in the need for sending folks to a fitness for duty evaluation because a good portion of them will be able to remediate their own issues before they get more severe. So in exploring everything that was out there, what we had on our platform, reading all the well-known published books about the models that exist out there, and looking at the assessments that weren't on our platform, we came across one in particular, PAN-Genos International. And Dr. Ben Palmer and Con Stowe, they're out of Sydney, Australia. They did a lot of research on emotional intelligence. It was in their early years. That's what their research projects were on. And what they did is they factor analyzed all the well-known models that are out there, the ability model. They looked at the trait model, the mixed models, the competency models. And anyone that's familiar with factor analysis or can think back to their stats class knows that really that's a important analysis that involves what is the overlap amongst the different models? What are the similarities across different things? And what they concluded is, yes, there are underlining aspects to all the models, and that is the core of what emotional intelligence is. And so they produced the SUIT in 2001, and then Dr. Palmer graduated and finished his research project, continued to do some research, and went ahead and created the PAN-Genos International, the company, and published a revision. So it included the follow-up research that they did with the original SUIT and produced the PAN-Genos Emotional Intelligence Inventory. And that's available as a self-report selection option, but also in 360-degree feedback for developmental purposes. So anyone that knows me very well, or if I continue to meet and discuss, network with you folks, that I'm very particular in the assessments that I use and recommend. My wife would say, well, why aren't you like that at home? But she knows that it's really important to me professionally. I have very high standards. So for me to adopt something or be willing to use something, not only do I have to open the hood and make sure it's all psychometrically strong, that the reliability estimates are there and that it's proven to predict things and has high validity, but it also needs to make sense to me clinically. And as I mentioned before, I was struggling with all these different models out there. What is this definition? And didn't like how much different stuff was amongst the different assessments that were out there. They were very confusing to me. So I applied what the PAN-Genos model is, and we'll go through that in a minute, but I compared it to what this common definition model was. And it's stunning, the overlap. So great, if this assessment has strong psychometrically, I like what I'm seeing here clinically and intuitively. So what they found when they factor analyzed all those other assessments, these 6 areas are the common core, common agreement. And we have 1, self-awareness. That matches up with identify and understand own emotions, which I called self-awareness to begin with. Self-management. Manage your own emotions. I called it self-regulation. Emotional reasoning. Using your own emotions. I called it self-expression. Awareness of others. Identify and understand others' emotions. I called it empathic. Authenticity. This was a little bit of a more difficult one for me to kind of find around. It's manage others' emotions. I called it interactive. Come back to that in a second. And then we have positive influence. Using others' emotions. I called it motivational. So in really exploring this particular assessment, I had a lot of conversation back and forth with the publishers and said, can you help me make sense of this, what you mean by authenticity? And how does that perhaps apply to managing others' emotions? I did not tell them I was comparing their model to what made sense or what exists out there in terms of a working definition, common definition. And we got to, they explained that it really has to be with genuine, your own personal integrity. It's treating others with respect in the sense that if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. It's reliability. It's a lot of things. But that's when we did the factor analysis, it's this idea that you're being the real you. You are, maybe stylistically that might not be great when interacting with someone else, but it's better than being fake and then being able to read through it. You say you're going to do something, you follow through with it. So it's like this personal integrity, which makes more sense to me in terms of being interactive. Really, you know, if you want to be able to work with someone else and be able to massage their emotions in a positive way, chances are you're more likely to do that if you are doing that in a more authentic and genuine way. So, whoops. Here is the model that they published. And at the core, emotional intelligence. In the outer blue ring, we have the 6 skill sets that I just presented to you on the other slide. On the outer gray ring, we have that's the outcomes if someone is emotional intelligent in the given skill. And then the inner white ring is that's the outcomes of someone who's not demonstrating emotional intelligence behavior based on that skill. So if someone's self-aware, they are present. If someone is not self-aware, they're disconnected, and so forth. And so the model's very clean, very easy to understand. If I'm doing a development session or a consulting session with someone, it's very easy for that person I'm working with to understand this model and make sense of it and apply it to their own lives. You know, typically when I do a workshop, I have like 3 or 4 hours to go through things. And I included some slides in case we had time on some reflection exercises that we do. And originally, when I was doing this workshop, I had done it based on my own definitions that I used combined with what the working definitions were. And I've since changed that to the Genos skills definitions. So what I typically do is I pose some reflective questions. We break off in groups. We spend time talking about our thoughts and you know, share with one another. I go as far as having people rate themselves and how does that differ after we've talked about it. But we're not going to have time to do that in the 1-hour presentation. But you're more than welcome to have a copy of these slides and kind of just ask these questions to yourself. Think about them post-presentation. But they help to really get at the aspect of really what is the Genos model and what is the definition, what is it really trying to get at for each of the six skill sets. So again, it's important for me that things make sense, but it's also important for me to know that it works. So just some overarching here. The Genos developmental program has shown that when applied, it will be successful in terms of improving leadership effectiveness, sales performance, absenteeism reducing, job satisfaction, innovation, and teamwork effectiveness. And these are all very strong correlations. The percentages represent for the existing that they have, and it's fairly substantial, large but if you go on their website, you can see what companies, but happens to be a customer of theirs. The Australian version of our Walmart happens to be a customer of theirs. And collectively, on average, when applied in this developmental program, leadership effectiveness improved by 36%, sales performance improved by 23%, and so forth. So really good stuff, and great from the general workplace environment. How does this apply to public safety? So unfortunately, although there has not been research conducted specific for public safety, and that's part of the reason we really want to get into this market of emotional intelligence, is there is no solution out there. We need to do something about it.
What are those corrected for? They can't be wrong.
I grabbed this from there's a overarching article that Genos had put out. I can write that down and I can call them up and ask them exactly what they corrected the things for.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest with you, unless they're corrected for a bunch of things, because they're too high.
Yeah. I can see the leadership effectiveness is pretty high. Yeah. I can double check what they did to correct it, but with these large organizations, based on the research they did, the percentage of improvement, I don't know what time that is based off of either. But was it immediately sales performance 23% increase? Did it take 6 months to kind of get up to that level? So this was just taken from the research that they published. If you go on their website, though, you can probably pull this up and it'll be able to say what they corrected it for. They're pretty transparent. So it's not that they would try to hide anything or not. But genosinternational.org is their website. And we might have a similar question for this slide. So I'll do my best if I answer it if I can. But when they wanted to see where it stood in terms of resilience, being able to predict stress, and be able to predict employee engagement. And so they took a resilience scale that exists. That's also on the website. It's pretty sound psychometrically based on the user manual. That all right, does our model, does our assessment and the different skill sets predict resilience based on this resilience scale that's already proven itself in the market? And what they found is that there was a correlation with each of the 6 skill sets where you would expect it, with resilience and stress management, the highest correlation. But that overall, each aspect to some degree has some overlap with resilience, and that stress management is the largest of that overlap, suggesting that, and this is based on the connection it has with another existing assessment, but this is the first step to suggesting that the assessment itself does actually predict resilience, and that if the developmental program is applied to it, that there's opportunity for growth in these areas, both if it's a strength and continue to improve it in that regard, but also if it's a limitation, get it to at a more at par level with the general population, or even turn it into a strength. Actually, I can provide the slide to you. It's real hard to see, but I wanted to show you.
I can see it.
I wanted to show you that there are a number of articles of which one of these includes where they got those numbers from. So it's not trying to be hidden. It's buried in a number of research articles that have been done on Genos specifically. So if we're able to provide you with these slides post-presentation, looking at it on the screen, it's larger. You can zoom in and follow through with some of these articles if you're interested. But also the website that I had mentioned before, the Emotional Intelligence Consortium.org, has all these articles on its platform as well. So if you work in the public safety market specifically in police, you'll know that the terms feelings and emotions and even intelligence gets a little scary to them. What do you mean feelings? Mr. Tough Guys. That's an old school traditional way of looking at things, but that is part of their culture. So we realize that as the Genos assessment exists in of itself, it's established, it is predicting, it's shown to predict a lot of these things. Whoops. There is some, although not necessarily a direct relationship with something that's specific to public safety, still leadership effectiveness is important in the public safety profession. Sales performance, really, what exactly do they mean by sales performance? There's a lot of aspects to what makes someone a successful salesperson. Are they able to negotiate very well? Are they able to appeal to the people that they're trying to sell to? Well, these aspects are important in public safety. They're interacting with the community. They have to be able to sell ideas or sell them an idea to get them to do something in order to make an experience more safe or get whatever goals they have accomplished. So there are aspects of this negotiation or sales that is important to law enforcement and other protective services roles. Job satisfaction. If we don't like our job, typically you don't do it well. Or as well as you can is if you loved it. So innovation, being strategic, teamwork effectiveness, all of these to some degree and in some relationship are important to public safety roles. So if we can take the assessment and produce reports that include language that is valuable and able to be accepted and embraced by the public safety profession, protective services roles, then we're at better odds that they'll start using it. And so if you take a look at the intrapersonal characteristics, the ones in green, really what these have to do are related to stress management, reducing stress. If we take a look at the orange ones, the interpersonal skills, they have to do with communication, conflict resolution, reduction in conflict and problems. And this is the language of protective services industry. So they apply, and so we need to make sure that the reports that exist from these assessments and the developmental tips and resources that come along with it, the feedback that we provide, are using the right language so it hits home with them. And so we are currently in the process of designing some protective services specific reports for Genos and plan to include those onto the PAN platform at some point early next year. It takes a while to build them, but we are in the process of doing so. And so we will have, just like I showed you on the cycle graph, the cycle of the work life of officer, selection is important. Getting the right candidates in place is important. So we plan on having a selection report that hits on those emotional intelligence skill sets. And their existing assessment has 82 items. 70 of the items are actually capturing intelligence type behaviors. 12 of those items are designed to be a socially desirable scale. So they're capturing whether or not the person is being honest, forthcoming, candid in their response style to taking the assessment, which is obviously an important thing to measure when selecting a job candidate. Of course, they're going to, in most cases, put their best foot forward. To what degree are they doing that? And then reports include not only the results, the scores, but they also include suggested behavioral interview follow-up questions that might be nice to do during the interview if you decide to bring them in to take them that far in the process. And then from the development standpoint, we have a few different reports here. We do have a 360-degree feedback report that we're working on, and that's where the actual employee themselves takes the assessment, their supervisor takes the assessment and fills it out on behalf of the employee, and other coworkers also have an opportunity to take the feedback report. It could be a direct report, it could be a peer There's also a other version where if you wanted to go into maybe if for wellness reasons, ask a spouse, ask a family member. You can ask clients and customers as well. If that fit the needs of the organization or the agency, you can do that to create a 360-degree feedback report. We also are designing a 180 where it just involves the employee and the supervisor, and then just a self-report where it's just the employee. The risk of that is that that's based on the person's own perceptions, so if they're not already self-aware, there's some concern in terms of how accurate and reliable the results can be. So always when you can get multiple angles at something in the 360 would be the recommended choice. But also to have some developmental tips that you can hand back. So that would be each version. Developmental tips based on the person's self-report, based on the supervisor's report, and based on everyone else's report as well. Here's your limitations, here's your strengths, here's some suggestions to work on, and what can you specifically do behaviorally to start growing in that area.
Scott,
yes?
Good question. Going back to the last slide.
Sure.
The items.
Yep.
70 emotional intelligence work behaviors. Is that have you done these before?
I've
items? So like past experience in items? Like what do you mean by measure 70 emotional intelligence workplace behaviors?
Not 70 different emotional intelligence behaviors. We've identified 6 skill sets, so all 70 items fall under one of those 6 skill sets.
Categories are like, I have done this, or I've done this in the past type of.
Yep, I'm going to show you an example on a slide just in a minute on one of them, but yep, I'll definitely get you to that. It's actually the 2 slides from now. Oh. Okay, so these development reports, it is a separate assessment where the first assessment had the 82 items. The development assessment has 42 items, but you take each item twice. And the first time everyone takes it, they're rating that item, that behavioral based item, they're rating it on how important it is to the job, to the position, to the role, to the agency. Then they answer it a second time and they say, what level of demonstration is that officer, is that employee actually demonstrating these behaviors? So how important is it to the job? How much are they demonstrating it? They take each item twice. And in this one, there's 7 items under each 6 of the EI competencies. So very similar to the way the selection report is set up. I should have presented it that way. What's important to know is that the Genos assessment is not measuring how high someone's emotional intelligence is. It's a skill set. So it's based on the theory that no matter where we fall, and if it is true that emotional intelligence, some people are naturally born with higher levels, some people are born with lower levels. They are identified as skill sets that can be measured and developed over time. And as a result, the claim is it's not really that critical or that important at this point when measuring it, how emotional intelligence they possibly can. We want to know, how are they displaying it in the workplace? That's what really matters. How are they, how are they showing up? So it was specifically designed for that purpose. It's not, can they do it? It's, will they do it? Will they likely be doing it? And so the Genos assessment measures demonstrate that emotionally intelligent behavior. And if they're displaying it to a high degree, that's great. It's considered, they're leveraged as a strength. If they're not meeting expectations, it means, hey, we got to work on this. Either you can do it already, and here's what we should do about it, or you're struggling to do it. We actually need to develop that skill a little bit further. Not just, hey, start doing this. But each of the items are Likert scale, 5-point Likert scale items, ranging from almost never or seldom that you see that behavior to usually or almost always. So here's a little snapshot of what the report looks like. So here's where we're getting to each item. We have 2 scores. We have at the very top where it says level of importance, 4.8. The employee is being measured on self-management, on the emotional intelligence skill of self-management. So everyone that takes this, the employee, the supervisor, and anyone else that takes it, rates how important is each one of these 7 items to the job. How important is it? The identified employee, as a second time taking that particular item, these 7 here, they answer it based on how often is that employee demonstrating that behavior. So here we have the item level, the 7 items, and the person will get rated twice, and then the score at the very top is the average of all 7 items. They scored a 4.8 in terms of how important self-management is to the job. They scored a 3.6 in terms of how well they're demonstrating self-management on the job. And then when we look down to the item levels, we can see that they scored important. How important is it that they manage their emotions effectively in difficult situations? It's 4.8 important. It's the person is displaying it, demonstrating it at a 3.8. Demonstrates a positive, energizing demeanor. It's a very important, and they're demonstrating it not quite there, but not too far off at a 4.3. How important is it that you manage your time effectively in that role? 4.5. Are they demonstrating it? A 2.5. So there we have kind of a more significant difference in number. This third column, the small d, represents that difference. So anything that is above the expectation, above, if they're displaying the behavior, demonstrating the behavior above the level of importance, it's going to be a green, identified as a strength. And that goes down all the way to, if it's fairly close to the score, up to 0.5 under what the expectation is, what the importance score is. But once it hits 0.6, all the way up to 1.0, that's considered, that's a moderate area, that's a marginal area. It's definitely not a strength, but might not be so severe that it's considered a weakness, but it's an area that we still want to look at and see, it's an opportunity to grow still. That's 1.1 or higher in terms of a difference in score is certainly an area of needed growth, and where any training or development that goes on post-administration should definitely include those items. And so this is just one example of the one of the emotional intelligence skills, but that it gets rated this way for all 6 of them. Last thing I would like to point out, which was I thought a very cool feature, was that on this little box here, on the level of demonstration line, that is a benchmark score. And it's produced down in the bottom half of this under BM. And what the benchmark score is for that given position. In this case, we're developing protective services, so we don't have a norm, a benchmark for that at this point yet. But in this case, I think this was based on managers or supervisor positions across all industries. The benchmark is where do the top 25, where do the people that fall between 25th percentile rank and 75th percentile rank in terms of production, where are they falling in terms of their ratings? So anywhere between, anyone under 25% is going to fall below that box. Anyone above it is going to be in the upper echelon of compared to what your standard average managers are doing. Yes.
Just to give you an indication of time, it's just after 5:30, but I think we have some extra time for.
I'm almost done. Perfect.
Yeah, if you want to ask questions and all that, just to
sure.
Give you an idea.
Thank you. So then this benchmark column here signifies whether or not they fall within the box standard, if they fall below the box, below, or above the box, high. So in summary, I think there's a ton of applications that and relevancy of emotional intelligence in the work that we do. For organizational consulting, it's useful both at the selection side of things and also in developmental contexts. Really, any role that involves interaction with others and the importance of nurturing that relationship, to any stressful role that involves some kind of stress management to be able to successfully continue on in that role, are great fits for organizational consulting. Name me one job that doesn't at least have one of those two. For personal coaching, I think it's valuable of career guidance and peak performance training. If you think of some athletes in peak performance training, that might be a great avenue as well. I'm not too involved in anything in that regard, but I do think that there's a lot of applications in terms of leadership and being a good team member that can be applied into athletics. And then from a clinical, more wellness intervention, if anyone's dealing with any stress management issues or relationship issues, fantastic. This emotional intelligence is something that probably, if you're working on it, is going to improve those areas. And then it also helps with establishing a treatment plan and monitoring progress along the way. And then finally, here's all the reasons why ultimately we chose to partner with Genos instead of any of the other tools that are out there that are good tools as well. But what we felt that why Genos stood out is that the model was very simple and intuitive. It made sense. If we're going to be delivering any development with anyone, it's easy to kind of explain that model, and it's easy for them. It's more easy for them to understand and embrace that model. It's based on will-do behaviors, which ultimately is consistent with what's truly important in a workplace. Doesn't matter how good you are if you're not doing it. Are you doing it is what's really important. It's empirically proven, which we'll check further more intimately into the stats, but it is empirically proven. The research is published and is out there to measure and predict many job-relevant performance outcomes. Has strong reliability and validity. That's been checked in the user manual. The reports are designed for both selection and developmental context. Not all of the assessments or solutions that exist out there cover both. It's available in 360-degree feedback, which we felt was more valuable than some of the solutions that are out there that are only self-report and very limited in that way. The reports are easy to understand and visually pleasing. And then, unlike anything else that I found out there, is developmental programming and resources, materials, handouts already exist, training recordings, and there's a robust amount of resources that Genos has built to wrap around the assessment in terms of development that no other comes with no other assessment option that I came across. So for all these reasons and what PAN wants to do to help the public safety protective services market, we felt that this is the company that we want to pair with, and this is how we think we could best deliver a product and service that will help them in the areas of stress management and conflict resolution. So, all right, that brings me to the end. So did we have any comments, thoughts? I know we had the one question about specific research and correction, so I can make sure I get an email out to the specifics there.
A couple of questions from the web.
Okay.
The first one is, what is the level of adverse impact for EI?
Okay.
And I can give you the next one, or if you want to answer that one.
Sure, I'll take that one. So that's a good question. Is it adverse impact for EI or adverse impact for the assessment? That's the question. I believe that in the context of workplace, not that this is the best practice or the right answer, but if you can demonstrate that it's job relevant and a business necessity to be able to successfully perform in the job, then rules such as like the 80-20 rule do not apply. But that needs to be documented, that needs to be researched, that needs to be demonstrated that whether or not it exists, that this is required, this is needed for the job. And speaking for the public safety protective services market, I can tell you that in most cases, because of the high risk involved and the fact that weapons are being carried, that a lot of that adverse impact stuff goes out the window. Now, this particular assessment as it exists was not built for public safety. We saw the value in bringing it on into that market. It was built just for business and general workplace environments. And The user manual is available. We can, if you go to the Genos International website, you can contact them and request a copy of the user manual that will get to that stuff. In reviewing it, I'm very, I'd rather go overboard than underboard, and everything that was reported in there said that the research that was done is showing that there is no difference amongst different genders or ethnicities. So I think it's safe to use either way.
The next one is, do you know of any job analyses or job analysis approaches that have been used to plan to assess content validity?
So specifically for the Genos, they did the factor analysis. So they have compared on already proven measures out there that have established reliability and validity. So the Mesquite and the EQI 2.0 that I presented on earlier on. These are already established measures, already proven measures. They factor analyze them, so they already use the existing proven measures to determine what is the best of each one, what is the overlap. From that point, they were able to develop that 6 skill set model. Yes, there are validity studies. A lot of that's covered on my research page that was tiny to read, that you can go and zoom in on, and I encourage you to read some of those research. Some are longer than others, but you can tell usually from the title if it says validity or whatnot. What I presented on the 2 slides that covered the correlations of resilience, yes, that was compared to an existing resilience measure that's already been proven as valid, and thus it meets construct validity standards. More importantly is the ability for it to predict outcomes, so that's criterion validity, and that the previous scale has shown that at least when they go through the developmental training program, that yes, it is predictive of those sales performance. And the question remains is that it looks like that there was some correctedness in those numbers that I cannot speak to, but we can reach out to Genos directly and find out those numbers. But yes, the answer is yes, there's construct validity and criterion validity already proven.
I have one that says, did the Australian researchers look at black-white impact in the U.S., but I believe you already mentioned looking at adverse impact and not.
Yeah, so there is no adverse impact. It's important to note that they do operate globally. So they have a number of partners and trainers that have collected data for them across various countries. I don't know to what those numbers are specifically to the U.S. I believe the user's manual was written before a lot of that research took place. But certainly if we reach out to them via their website, they would be able to provide that answer to them. But yeah, the research that has been conducted thus far, there was no adverse impact concerns whatsoever. And there is some cognitive processing going on, so that is a really great question. Anything related to adverse impact is a great question. And historically, there have been concerns and some evidence to show that there is adverse impact when measuring IQ or IQ-based assessments. But we got to remember that we are using a mixed model, so there are the elements of application that involve cognitive processing, but that they're also, it's behavioral based, and there are personality traits and characteristics and quote-unquote competencies that are at play. The ability to understand, to acknowledge and understand someone else's emotions is a competency-based skill set. So it is more often than not, we find that there are not many personality-based characteristics that have adverse impact. There are some that might have differences, but not to a significant degree. And so we are working here with both a cognitive processing model, but also personality and characteristic traits that overlap. So easier, it could be harder to demonstrate that, but I'm certain that it was covered, and I know it was in Australia.
I don't have any more.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank everyone for inviting me out today. I hope that, I'm sure there's some folks that use emotional intelligence and know the subject matter very well, and perhaps some others not so well. But I do hope that everybody took something out of it. And if you have any questions or are looking to break into doing more emotional intelligence work in your current roles, I'm happy to just talk shop with you guys. I presented to you based on what we found. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right assessment fit for what your specific interests might be. I'm more than happy to talk to you about emotional intelligence as a topic as a whole and help in any way I can. So thank you. I'll just end. My contact information is on the last slide. So.
Surprised there wasn't a Go Cubs again.
I'm in business mind now.